Once upon, not long ago, there was a teenage child. You couldn't really see it, it was always book beguiled. Its face was forever buried in volumes deep. You wouldn't get to know it, you didn't hear a beep. It didn't play, it couldn't run, no football came in sight. It made no crafts, it wouldn't sing, and it did not seek the light. The back only showed a dark spray of curls, the ones you would find on both boys and girls. Its backpack was strange, as if it were covered. The child seemed to float, it looked like it hovered. You couldn't but wonder, it didn't run into things. Did it have sensors that gave silent plings? The only real clues that one could find were the titles of the books that the child hid behind. Not some silly stories of gnomes and gentle giants. This one dove head first in the great world of science. One thing was certain, this kid was super smart. The report card, as always, truly a work of art. It went on to study at university and totally enjoyed all the diversity. So much to choose from, scientist or engineer, it all offered elements that the child held so dear. And so it started to look more and more around, all these kindred spirits that now could be found. No one was teasing, they all carried books, with nobody to give it disapproving looks. It then showed its face, that of a freckled girl, and the entire college campus enveloped in a whirl. Not that it mattered whether girl or boy, but the interactions brought such extra joy. She then started talking. Nanona is my name, but please call me Nano if it's all the same. Nano's always scouting, ever onto new things, and the backpack cover turned out to be wings. If before they made her feel less than a zero, Nano is an example of a modern-day hero. She works on a campus, the best in high tech, always facing forward, never looking back. And what's nice about it, about this very tale, is that it rings true for many Fe+male. Nano tells her story, no one will think her shy, to all those around her who seek how and why. And the best way to end is to let you know we're there, from female tech heroes with such kindness to share.
We need more diversity in the tech world because we need to be representative of society.
Diversity.
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 Diversity. Diversity. Diversity.
Diversity.
Diversity.
Female Tech Heroes is an initiative by the High-Tech Campus in Eindhoven that strives to create more diversity in the tech world. We put female and male heroes in the spotlight. We create awareness about diversity.
This is the second edition of our Female Tech Heroes Conference. And during 2 mornings, we will inspire the people at home and at the other side of the screen with inspiring speakers and panelists.
We need to make sure that we have an open eye for talent. We need to make sure that we are not blindsided by our bias, by our misassumption or misjudgments.
We need to realize that we do it in joint teams, men and women working together.
The more diversity
diversity, the more perspectives, the more problems can be solved.
Having a diverse and inclusive ecosystem is really the start for us to also address that great variety of problems that we have in the world to solve.
Make it discussable with your teams, with your bosses, with your managers, and put it on the agenda.
We need diverse perspectives to bring about new products that can solve real problems. We show women the importance of technology in society, that you can help many people with the best technology. So please, women, come and join us.
Welcome to the Fe+male Tech Heroes Conference 2022. Yeah. Our third edition, and this year again with real people, Hilde.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Great to see you all here. And again, a big applause for yourself, please.
And thank you, Margot Nijkamp, for this great start of the day with your specially written fairy tale for us.
It was beautiful.
The theme of today is shaping our future. And how to do this? Listen very carefully today. Who is a first-time visitor of the Fe+male Tech Hero Conference?
Okay.
Oh.
Wow, that's nice.
A
So
lot
many
of
new
faces,
Yeah,
Ingelou.
fantastic. Great to see. So with Female Tech Heroes, we strive to create more gender equality and diversity in the tech world. For example, by highlighting role models. And some of them you will meet today. For example, Isabel Mol, the Vice President of Dell, who will talk about how to attract more women to IT.
Yes, or how about Bei Wang? She's over there, who will dive into the metaverse with us. And Angela Maas, the well-known cardio feminist, who will share her vision on healthcare.
Fantastic.
The day will be filled with the great speakers, workshops and panels.
So take a quick look at the program behind us. You can also find this at the back of your badge. So at 10:30 we have a short break, and at noon the lunch starts, which is sponsored by ASML, so thank you very much for that. So after lunch at 1 o'clock there will be 7 workshops parallel to each other, so you can choose one. If you haven't done that already, you can do that in the entrance hall with one of my colleagues.
Yes, and after the workshops, there will be a short break, and then we will see you again here in the auditorium at 2:30 for the last part of our conference, for the interview with Angela Maas and a panel on the power of networking. And at 4 o'clock, there will be drinks and networking and music.
Music, a DJ as well. So some practical information. House of Yellow is making pictures and a video. Floris, maybe you can wave. Yes, fantastic. Where's the video crew? They're somewhere as well. If you do not want to be filmed... Oh, they're here, sorry. Oh. If you do not want to be filmed, that's okay. Please tell them or one of our colleagues here behind the desk. That's always fine. And then I think we're ready, Hilde.
I think we are.
So let's imagine, we already did that a little bit with Margot,
Yeah.
and we're going to continue doing that with our first speaker of the day. She is Business Development Manager at Smart Photonics. Give a big round of applause to Nazanin Shafiee.
Thank you. Thank you. It's exciting to be here. Thank you for showing up. It's nice to see real people. So I am the middle child in a family of 3 girls. So let me say right off the bat that with an 80 to 20% female to male ratio, my family's taken putting the spotlight on females to heart. Today, I'd like to tell you about my journey and some of the technology I've seen and been a part of developing. But before we go there, I'd like to start by sharing a very strong position that I hold. I believe the best way to shape the future is to have a hand in creating it. But to have the kind of future we want, we would need to imagine it. We would need to desire it. And we would need to inspire others to join us. Now, how do you get people as excited, as exhilarated as you may be about some of the ideas you aspire to? Especially ideas that others can't intuitively relate with. Maybe they've never been exposed to. For me, inspiring others is all about recreating that magical feeling. It's all about the magic of what you do. Because magic isn't what you and I don't understand. There is magic even if we fully understand the inner working of things. I love technology, and I've been in the high-tech world long enough that some may find it strange that I still feel so excited talking about it, as though it's my first time hearing it. To me, the high-tech world is a magical world. It's all so cool and fascinating and surreal. There's a beautiful quote by Arthur C. Clarke that captures it really well for me. He says, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." I think it's true. Less than 100 years ago, we didn't have a computer, not for general purpose, certainly not a commercially available one. During World War II, we had one for deciphering codes, and that was a computer the size of a room. The idea of having a computer in your pocket was considered absurd in our lifetime. The thinking was, well, how would you fit a mouse and a keyboard in there? And then others asked different questions. They imagined something outside the box. And these days, most of us don't walk around with a keyboard or a mouse in our pockets, unless we've made a visit to the IT. I want you to take out your cell phones out of your pockets. How much do you think it weighs? You can just think of it. Consider the very first cell phone was 50 pounds. That's 23 kilograms. Can you imagine carrying that? Well, there were those who couldn't. So they imagined something lighter. They imagined it smaller. They imagined it to be truly mobile. And then with advances in technology, specifically integrated circuits, which is essentially being able to put all the electronics on one piece of a semiconductor material, but also the doubling of the number of transistors nearly every 2 years, as Moore's law predicted, and many other advancements we've had over the last few decades. We're now sitting here with our cell phones in our pockets, weighing less than a couple of 100 grams. To me, that's quite magical. So I think we should face it. We have created a magical world with the power of our imagination. The fact that our cell phones functions as a phone, but also a computer, a TV, a game console, it's a book, it plays music for you, and that it fits in your pocket, it's incredible. It's magical. So despite all the problems we have in the world today, I think we've created a magical world, and we're currently living in a very magical period. And today, I'm going to tell you 3 stories from the magical world of high tech. 3 stories that I've been a part of. My first story is about how I got into the world of high tech, how I stumbled into the world of nano and micro-sized structures and devices. The Harvard graduate professor who I did my master's degree with had me visualize trigonal selenium nanowires. Don't panic, I'm not going to get all technical on you here. On day 1, he had me imagine these tiny little structures that you couldn't even see with your naked eye. And he asked me to think how I would go about measuring the properties of these tiny little structures, because there had to be a way, right? So today I'll ask you to use your imagination to get a feel for what these nanowires look like. So, imagine a bowl of cooked noodles. If you're decent in the kitchen, hopefully your noodles aren't overcooked or undercooked. So hopefully they're soft, all intertangled, all jumbled together, right? Well, that's how the selenium nanowires that I made kind of look like. Now imagine every noodle much, much thinner. Now I'd like you to grab a strand of your hair and look at it. And if your hair isn't long enough, have a look at your neighbors. I'm sure they won't mind. How thick do you think an average human hair is? Average human hair is 1/10 of a millimeter. For comparison, 1 nanometer, which is the unit we use for nano-sized structures, is 1 million times smaller than a millimeter, which is incredibly small. Small enough that you can't see with your naked eye. Here's a different way of imagining it. If you've got a tennis ball, the relationship between that tennis ball and the Earth is that same relationship between a nano-sized particle and that same tennis ball. Now, the nanowires that I made were about 100 nanometers in diameter, 100 nanometers thick. So that's about 1,000 times thinner than your hair. This is what they look like under an optical microscope. So the bar that I've put there is about 5,000 nanometer long, which is about 0.005 of a millimeter. Just to give you a sense for the size of that. And here's a closer up. The resolution isn't looking very good here, sorry. Now, you're probably wondering how useful things this tiny could possibly be, right? Well, let me tell you. Selenium as a semiconductor displays a lot of very interesting and unique properties. For example, you can shine light on these nanowires and generate electricity. This is a property we call photoconductivity. You can heat these nanowires and generate electricity. This we call thermoelectricity, which is useful as a green and sustainable energy resource. This next one is my favorite. You can squeeze these nanowires, and generate electricity. This we call piezoelectricity. Now, fun fact, the word piezo was derived from the Greek word piezin, which is to squeeze. Though when we're talking in a technical world, we never say, let's squeeze the nanowires. Rather, we apply mechanical stress to generate electric charge, which to me is not as interesting. So I like to think of it as squeezing these nanowires to generate electricity. There's one other property that's quite interesting about them, which is their nonlinear optic properties. This one may be a little bit harder to wrap our minds around, but it's one of those properties that generates a lot of really exotic effect. For example, if I have a crystal with nonlinear optic properties, I can shine IR light into it, and out from the other side, I can have a display of green light. So essentially, with nonlinear optic properties, you can change the color of light, but you can also change the shape of it in space and in time. It's the basis of many of the components in optical communication systems and optical sensing. Now, can you imagine taking these nanowires and measuring how much electricity they generate? Okay, I'm not going to bore you with the details here, but it's possible, and I actually ended up setting up a method that was supporting this about 100 times faster and cheaper. For me, the idea that such little noodles can have such incredible properties is magical. I find that sometimes it's in the simplicity of things that you find the magic. I'm going to wrap up my first story for you with a quote by Albert Einstein. Imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the entire world. My second story is about creating vision. By that, I don't mean the ability to envision and plan for a future. I mean the gift of sight. Some of you may have heard of people who've lost their eyesight because of advanced age-related macular degeneration, AMD, or other retinal-related diseases. As of now, there isn't any cure for such patients. Before I get into my story, let's take a minute and talk about the basics of how we see. The images we see are made up of light reflecting from the objects we look at. This light enters the eye through the cornea, passes through the lens, and creates an upside-down image on the retina at the back of the eye. The signal gets transferred to the brain. The brain analyzes the signal as the image we just looked at. Pretty simple stuff, right? Now, people with AMD have a retina with degenerated photoreceptors. It's these photoreceptors here that essentially transfer the light into a signal. Describing this problem makes it hard to see if we can help these people with AMD with technology, doesn't it? Except that when you think a little closer, you'll see what's really missing for these patients is this transfer of light to electrical stimulation. Very similar to the selenium nanowires we talked about, turning light into electricity, right? So all we needed to do was turn light, turn into electrical stimulation. Simple. And we did just that. We made a chip that had needle-like structures covering the whole surface of it. Now imagine each needle looking like the cartoonish image of a mountain with its top covered with snow. You're probably imagining something like this, right? Now make it a lot more uniform in height, more conical, space it out a little bit. These mountain-like needles that we had acted as nanoelectrodes on the circuitry of our chip. For making these chips, there were a few different parameters that was really critical for us to get right. One was the shape of these needles. It had to be in a way that would penetrate into the tissue. And the other was how much electrical stimulation are we transferring? If it was too little, there wouldn't be enough signal for the brain to analyze. If it was too much, well, you just managed to burn and damage the tissue. This was actually the part of the project that I was responsible for getting right, having this tight window of electrical stimulation to get transferred. And in all honesty, it proved to be a lot more complicated than any one of us had considered and imagined to begin with. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to show you the chip that we made, but I can show you something like this. You can imagine the overall device looks something like this after it was packaged. So this up here is the chip, the rest is the packaging. This whole device was so small, perhaps just like the size of the tip of a pencil. This would then get implanted in the eye through a fairly minimally invasive surgery, a half-hour procedure, local anesthesia, and it would get placed somewhere around here. Now, the mountain-like needles that we had on our chip would penetrate through the tissue. With the optics from the eye, we would be able to turn or create that light on the retina. It would take that light, transfer it into electrical stimulation, which would get transferred to the brain through the neural pathway. So that's it. We managed to turn light, convert it into electrical stimulation, and restore vision. In a way, we managed to put a camera in a human eye, and a camera that could see and could communicate what it could see to the brain. So for me, this is getting very close to the realm of cyborg-like movies. It's feeling a little bit more magical and surreal for me. This was a project that was very near and dear to my heart, and I still smile thinking of the profound effect you can have on human life with technology. These kind of stories where you get to step back and see the big picture, though, as magical as they are, I think they can also be a little bit intimidating. You can look at it and say, oh, I could never possibly know anything to contribute, right? But I promise if you were in my place, if you were close enough to the details, you would know how to use your imagination to be able to contribute. For this story, I'm going to leave you with a quote by Marie Curie. Nothing in life is to be feared. It's only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. My third story is about vision again. I do mean the gift of sight, but not what you're thinking. This time, I mean the different ways we can create vision, the different ways we can give sight, but rather than giving it to human, we give it to our machines and let our machines see. For this story, I'm going to take you back and forth in time. I'll tell you what's been done, but also what's on the horizon. If I use my imaginary black box, and I use sound on one side, and out from the other side, I tell you, I know what's inside. I think I've performed some magic, don't you? Now, if I use a different imaginary black box, and this time I tell you, I use radio wave, and using my imaginary black box, I can tell you there's an object, I know how far away it is from us, and by the way, it's moving towards us at a really high speed. I bet for a very brief moment, I can get some of you a little uncomfortable, right? Before I'll tell you about my third black box, let's talk about the magic of the first two. Let's talk about the magic we've created over the last 100 years. Initial recordings of sonar, sound navigation, and ranging traces back to 1490, when Leonardo da Vinci put a tube in water and detected a vessel by putting his ear next to it. Over 400 years later, it seems that it took the sinking of Titanic to prompt the first underwater echolocate. The world's first patent using this technology was filed just 1 month after the sinking of Titanic. I think you've all seen an image like this, the ultrasound of a fetus. Sonography uses high-frequency sound wave to create images of a fetus, organs, tissue, blood flow in the body. These days, there are also sonograms that can create 3D images. It's a fancier sonogram machine that can take images from different angles. Then those images are given to a computer. The computer puts it together, and you get something like this, which looks a lot more real, especially compared to the traditional ultrasounds. In a similar way that we've used sound for sonar technology, we've used radio wave for radar technology. If you've ever been pulled to the side of the road by a police officer for speeding, this is how you've been caught. These days, radar technology is used to detect aircrafts, ships, insects, birds, map the surface of the earth, give you properties of the atmosphere and the ocean. Now let's move on to my third black box, Lidar. Light detection and ranging, or laser imaging detection and ranging. The three technologies we just talked about, sonar, radar, and Lidar, they may seem very different. I mean, after all, we're using sound, radio wave, and light. Not a whole lot in common, except that the three of them use echo to map the unseen. Now, you may ask, why do we even need Lidar if we've got sonar and radar? Well, this would probably give you an answer. This is an image from a few years ago. Lidar technology can create very accurate data, much higher resolution. It can scan much larger areas in much less time, so you've got a lot more data to work with. It can also give us that fourth D, the fourth D in the dimension, the time, so we can get an idea of velocity of objects and how fast they're moving and which direction they're moving. This is a technology that I'm really excited about. We're currently making chips for this application, but I'm a lot more excited about this because I believe Lidar will be more than a black box. I believe Lidar will be a new way of living. You know how back in the day we used to call cars horseless carriages? To me, that's kind of funny because we used to remove the one characteristic that seemed so important to the identity of a carriage, which was the horse. By removing horses, cars proved to be entirely different beasts. They became symbols of suburbanization and self-definition. We may no longer call a car a carriage, but did you know that the word sedan is defined as an enclosed chair for moving a person between two horizontal places? Now, let's switch gears from horseless carriages to driverless cars. You see where I'm going with it, right? Driverless vehicles will have unexpected impact. They will look different, very much like the cars we have now. They look very different than the carriages. The future cars don't need to look anything like the cars today. Already, Google's pods are in the roads of California. There's some designs where you've got the car with no steering wheel, no pedal, and you've got seats facing each other around a table. But forget how it looks. How will it see? Will it be able to drive in the dark? Will it be able to see in 2D, 3D, or will it be 4D? If we are to use these technologies, we need to be able to count on them, because there is a difference between debris by the side of the road or a child running into a road. Digital photography has made 2D imaging quite trivial. Adding that third dimension is quite expensive, though. The traditional approach is to take multiple images, multiple flat images from different angles, and put it together to create the illusion of depth, very much like how our brain sees with the right and the left eye. The problem, though, is this optical illusion. It's difficult to separate objects of interest from backgrounds, shadows from wholes. And so is determining distances precisely. These days you have smart speakers spreading rapidly. You see people asking these assistants for weather forecast, traffic update. But these devices can only rely on what they hear. Can you imagine talking to these digital servants with actions as well as words? With Lidar, we won't just have autonomous vehicles. We won't just have smart roads. We won't just have smart cities. We'll have a new way of living. I'm getting close to the end of my time, so let me wrap up here. Today we talked about nanowires that we can't see with the naked eye, to how we can see with microneedles as an implant, and how we can expand seeing to a world beyond us. I know that sometimes in the world of technology, with the jargons that we use, sometimes ideas may seem abstract, a bit distant, and unapproachable. But when you get a little closer, I promise you'll see the magic and how easy it is to be able to connect with these ideas. You'll see how you can feel it in a much more tangible way and how you can contribute by using your imaginations. Remember, we all do something magical. Sometimes it's hard to see the magic. So all you need to do is just take a step back and look for that magic. And when you find it, share it. I'm going to leave you with one final quote, one of my favorite quotes of all times. My mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive. And to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. Thank you.
We started with a fairy tale.
Yes.
We continued with magic.
Yes.
Technology can be linked to so many things.
Yes.
Thank you, Nazanin.
Thank you.
For your great talk.
Thank you.
Questions for you.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, question for you. You are a business development manager within Smart Photonics.
That is true.
How do you share the magic there? How is it like to be a female tech hero within this company?
You know, being in my role, what I need to do is just know who I'm talking to. And it's really just taking the magic of what we do to the people I'm talking to. I talk to people in telecom, datacom, automotive, so it's just people from very different backgrounds. They all have different jargons, different language, if you will, that they speak with. And it's just knowing the language and knowing how to step back or step in to kind of show them that magic. So it's just learning what we do, learning what they do, and just creating that gap, creating that bridge.
Yeah, and how is it like to be a female tech hero within a technical company?
Absolutely fantastic. I'm often one of the only females in the room, which sometimes make it easy, sometimes makes it not as easy. But I'm absolutely happy if I'm the one person who can make it easier for other people within the company. I'm the only one in my team who's a female, and I have been the one female in the room quite often in my career. So,
but you will manage.
But I will manage. I've enjoyed it. It's been a fantastic ride so far.
Okay,
Yes.
very nice. I think we have a few questions left, Ingelou, for the audience. Some room, a few minutes. Are there questions from the audience? Because we can throw this in the public. There may be a last question for me. What's your mission for the future? What's next in your career, in your personal life?
That's a good question. I think for me, I've enjoyed changing positions because every time I have changed, it's a really steep learning curve to see, okay, well, this field I know, what's the next? And every time I've switched, I've seen how sometimes similar it is in a way. There is, again, these jargons, these words, this language that you need to pick up. But my mission is to just be in the cool and magical world of high tech if I can, and learn what's possible and talk about it. Because if you don't talk about it, we can't just create that excitement. And to me, life isn't worth living if you're excited, unless you're excited about it. So my mission is to continue my career in a high-tech world and bring that spark, bring that magic to other people and share
to
it
everyone.
to
Yes.
everyone.
Thank you very much. Give her a big applause.
Thank you.